my technical depth. Thank you. Can't hear you, Senator, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I said thank you, Mr. Carmody. I hope my questions will be dealt with a little bit more thoughtfulness than a complete rejection as you've just gone through. And I suspect that this is some of the response that some of your CASA complaints have come from is this sense of not being heard.
Excuse me, Senator, I'm sorry.
So my question is, would you like to hear my question, Mr. Carmody?
Certainly.
Or did you have a comment to make? Please fill up.
Senator, I just wanted to say, please, I'm not in a position where I'm completely rejecting. I'm offering another point of view. The point of view was made very strongly by people, and I'm offering another. That's all.
No, you did say you rejected, and you did use that language, so I was just reflecting on what you'd said.
I'm sorry, yes, I did. The allegations against me I reject.
So I want to ask you, at the last budget estimates, I asked you a question about Mr. Buckley, and I did try and clarify it to confirm the completeness of the information that you're providing, and that whether or not it was the only matter that you were aware of, and you said yes. And given that I've subsequently discovered that there are other matters afoot, I felt like it was, you have said you didn't mislead the committee, but I certainly felt that you had not been fulsome in your answer, and I didn't think that was a satisfactory response. Do you want to expand on that now?
Certainly, Chair, I'd love to. I think that you said, I want to raise Mr. Glenn Buckley. I responded and said, I'm aware of Mr. Buckley, yes. You said, is it correct that there's been a settlement made with Mr. Buckley recently? That was your question, and I said, partially, there has been no settlement made. Mr. Buckley put in a complaint about a CASA officer with regard to defamation and said the CASA officer defamed him. That was in the context of the only settlement offer that has been made, which was the question you asked. I went through that. You said, do you want to consult with your internal lawyers to check that that's current? And I consulted with my lawyers and it was current. And you said, and then you moved straight on. You said the industry is following with great interest, and then you went on to Part 138. Senator, I was quite happy to answer more questions about Mr. Buckley. But Mr. Buckley, there has been one offer of a settlement to Mr. Buckley, and that was the matter that I raised. There has been no other offer to the settlement, for a settlement to Mr. Buckley at all. He's made claims for years.
Being a lawyer and not having enough technical accuracy to have teased out what was patently a range of other issues that were afoot with Mr. Buckley. So, yes, technically you're quite correct, but if you were my child and we were having that conversation, I would feel that you'd not been completely honest with me, and that was the sense that I was left with, which was that you just left stuff off the table.
Senator, well, that was not my intention. I did answer fulsomely with regard to that question, and then you moved very quickly on to Part 138, which surprised me. But you wanted to ask questions about 138, and so therefore I went on to 138. I was not intending to mislead. I had a stack of information on Mr. Buckley, the same information I have now.
No, well, it did surprise you, obviously, because you had a whole lot of other things you could have said, and
absolutely,
you know, you left it unsaid. So note to self, hey, that I will have to ask more broad questions in future. I want to ask you about this concept of an independent complaints commissioner. Can you tell me why we got into this situation that what could potentially have been resolved much earlier with a better process was actually, I think Mr. Buckland's words were that because the document was off the table, that there was no problem to answer. Can you expand on that for me?
Senator, I'm not quite sure I can. The reason I say that is there have been multiple interactions between Mr. Buckley and the Industry Complaints Commissioner. I'm just not sure. I just don't have in front of me the document that he's referring to that we allegedly said was now off the table. I do note that there have been interactions, but as I said, to be open and completely frank, the whole matter is with the Ombudsman, and everything that we have done with Mr. Buckley is at the feet of the Ombudsman, and I'd be very happy to see that process work through.
It is most fortuitous for you that it is before the Ombudsman, because it will not keep discussing Mr Buckley's individual circumstances, because, as you say, it's been considered by the Ombudsman. But I'm telling you, and I have raised this before, and we have had a frank discussion about this before, that I hear this all over Australia, that people, individual little businesses, don't have the capacity to go up against your legal team, and this very adversarial approach, which means that small businesses, general aviation businesses right across Australia, are being crippled by this very approach. Perhaps we could talk about consistency, where you've made comments around your desire to see consistency in the business. How's that project going?
Senator, quite well. Just to close out on the Industry Complaints Commissioner, if I may, and I'll go to consistency. The Industry Complaints Commissioner is one person with a staff of one. He's not supported by the CASA legal team. He is a lawyer by training, but he conducts his investigations completely impartially and he reports to the board. He doesn't seek, he's very clear, he doesn't seek that engagement that's being referred to. I accept the fact that people might have difficulties with regulation and may have difficulties with the CASA legal team, but the Industry Complaints Commissioner is a very clear process put in place in around 2006, 2007. He deals with about 130 complaints a year, and as far as I know, he deals with them quickly and efficiently. But sometimes people don't get what they want. Senator, in terms of the second point you raised about consistency, it is a huge challenge. We are restructuring our organisation to create a central guidance function so that we can deal consistently with matters across the country. I do note that some people at the same time gave evidence today that they don't want to deal with the central element, they want to deal with their local office. It makes it extremely difficult, Senator, and we can deliver consistency.
Just to clarify, the evidence that was given by that person said that they didn't want to end up with a central agency that would take a very long time, because businesses will go to the wall if there's not a sense of urgency.
Senator,
I don't think she was objecting to a central agency. She was concerned about the amount of time and money that would take.
Thank you, Senator, for the clarification. I think that what we are proposing in terms of guidance is that our local officers will always have one place to go, only one place, to seek guidance before they make a regulatory decision. So we will always be consistent across the country. We've been doing that with, we've trialled the arrangement already. We've been doing it with things, we've said we'll put the same arrangement in place for review of fatigue rules so that the same people will look at all of the applications for relief from fatigue rules. So we are moving very much to that centralised function, and it's taken a long time, but it is a fundamental structural change to the organisation, because we've had a regional structure for a very long time and a lot of regional experts who deal with their very closely with their local constituency. So we are working on it, I know the trial's through. I'm not sure of the date, but I expect part of the structure to be in place by early December of this year, so that it actually beds down by the middle of next year. But that's a key element of our approach to becoming more consistent. And in developing that process, it's been quite challenging because consistency and outcomes-based regulation don't always work together, if I can put it that way. Consistency can be binary. We are trying to come up with consistent decisions to complex regulatory matters that can apply across the country, and it is quite a challenge.
All right, I need to hand over to some of the other senators. I just want to clarify too that Mr Buckley, when he asked to see the chair of the board, that he did actually make that point. He said after 6 months he had a response. I just want to be clear that there wasn't, that he met with the chair and with a staff member of CASA, who was later the person who wrote to us that his employment be terminated.
He did meet with the chair. That was probably about 12 months ago. It's just at that point it didn't clearly come out. He has corresponded with the chair and the board on a regular basis. He writes matters to the board, and the emails that he sends are always responded to. Senator, we make a point of responding to all of the correspondence. And so the
Well, hang on, is that you or is that the board?
That's the board. That's the board makes the point of responding to all of the correspondence. I respond to it all. I've got 3 lines of inquiry that run with Mr. Buckley. I've got a single point of contact in the organisation because I cannot not respond. The board secretary has a single point of contact and responds on behalf of the board, there is one other line as well, so that we manage to ensure that we are always responding to Mr. Buckley and we are always being appropriate and consistent and timely.
Well, unfortunately, it hasn't saved his house or his parents or anybody else, so that's a most unfortunate outcome for Mr. Buckley, isn't it? And I'm sure that none of the CASA staff have had to bear anything near that financial impost.
Senator, it is a tragedy for Mr. Buckley. I understand the points that are being made by Mr. Buckley, as I indicated before, and Mr. Buckley made the point, I think, that we, in terms of the notice that we provided in October of 2018, that was for allowing him to expand his services, which happens all the time. We did not approve that. We did not stop him operating. We allowed him to continue to operate under his current arrangement. I can't speak for his house or his family, and as I said, I'm very sorry for Mr. Buckley, but I'm quite happy to answer for the approach that we have taken with Mr. Buckley. It has not been perfect, but it has not been perfect from both sides.